Once we have revenue projections and we have information from the directors as far as what their needs are, and we will either expand or contract depending on what expectations are and also what negotiations are. We have 4 negotiations going on. So there's a few things that we have to get numbers on first before we can come back to you and basically say, now we need to do this. And what we do, it's determined based on what the need is. Are we expanding or are we contracting? If we expand, the biggest concern for me in the city right now is really, other than street maintenance, is asset replacement. I'm very concerned about it. In this 15-16 budget, we talked about the fact that we're only funded through 2017. So we do need to get those reserves back in to the general fund operating reserve and also into the asset replacement fund. We'll make it through 2018. We'll make it happen. So it's not the end of the world, but it's something we need to really start watching, because this is what funds our fire trucks, that type of thing. Although that could change too with other funding sources that may become available, may actually make those monies last longer, which is my hope. Now, if we actually have growth, or if we contract, what will happen is we will come back to you and we will say, here are the things the city is required to do by law. These are the other functions that the city performs. These are our service levels. And we'll have to have some serious conversations about what if the maintenance, street maintenance bond doesn't pass, or what if we don't even do that? How are we going to go forward? And it may be talking about something we talked about a week or so ago, where some function that we provide in the general fund is actually what would go away and not the street maintenance, that type of thing. So it's not just cut and dry. There's conversations that need to be had. And this is a very, it's a different makeup on the council, and may have different priorities in that. And so we'll just have to have that conversation so that we hear what you guys are thinking, okay? And we'll move forward once we have that information. And as soon as I have those expenditure numbers and I have the revenues, I will come and talk to you. The other thing I will do is, as soon as we have the first quarterly report for 2016 available through March, which will be very shortly, I will get on the schedule and I will come and talk to you, and I'll tell you where we're at for 2016. Okay, so you can get kind of an idea of where we're at and if we need to make any modifications between now and the end of the year. Okay, that said, this is the time in the program where we talk about what your ideas are. I know the acting city manager sent out a memo and asked council to consider what type of budget focus areas and desired budget outcomes you had in mind. Like, what were you thinking? And we want to get those thoughts from you. The budget focus areas, again, they don't change very often, so I think if we start there, that might be a good idea. If we can reaffirm those or make whatever changes. And I think, Mayor, do you want to just go ahead and you guys talk to see where you're at, who's looked at those, or would you like me to manage this part?
I'm okay to do that now. Are you done with your presentation portion of the? Yes. Okay. So I think we should start with the focus areas, and as the finance director said, these have been basically unmovable for a long time, and that's because they're vetted into our comprehensive plan, and so changing those would be somewhat significant. But you did mention that's what the employees look at when they're budgeting instead of the actual budget outcomes. Was that part of your?
No, we know what the budget focus areas are because they've been there for so long. What the directors are really going to focus on, and what the city manager and I are really going to be looking at when they come back with their budget is do the budgets tie to the desired budget outcomes? What do you want to see from the next 2 years? What are your priorities?
Great. Okay. So let's start with the focus areas. Does anybody have any changes or modifications to the budget focus areas for the 2017-18 budget? Is this, we're obviously in a study session, so we're not voting on this. We'll have another chance at it at a future council meeting, so. Well, the verbiage is powerful in this case, so it would be a little bit more reaching than just verbiage if we changed it. Any changes to the focus areas? Councilmember Zamberg?
So these are pretty high level, and it's kind of hard to say that you would disagree with any of them. I mean, they are a part of our comprehensive plan. But in the first section, financial stability, it says, maintain a long-range financial plan. How long do we have a financial plan for, say, our operating budget? I know our capital facilities plan, we budget out 7 years. Mm-hmm. So when we say maintain a long-range financial plan, are we talking about just the capital facilities plan?
No, we maintain a 6-year strategic operating plan as well, that we update throughout the 2-year period. We have, when you, in the budget documents and the council members who were here previously, there's always a graph that shows 6 years out, and it usually looks like this, because you don't want it to look like this, because that's kind of leans towards overtaxation. Okay, so what you want to see is it always going like this, you know, because you're always keeping it in check. But that comes directly from that plan. So when we're putting this 2-year plan together, I will take what you tell me, I will put the 2-year plan together with a whole lot of help from other people, and then we will take it and move it out for 4 more years, 2 more bienniums. So we're always looking at 6 years.
And so would someone be able to see our 6-year strategic operating plan on the website?
No, well, I mean, yeah, I could put it out there. I would have to look at it and see what condition it's in. It's not the prettiest of spreadsheets, but I will take a look at that. We do provide it. We'll like pretty up the summary pages, and it's always provided during the budget process to council on that. It's the one I usually give it to you on legal. And there's always, it has a long list of the revenues. It shows them out 6 years, then it shows the expenditures, and then you see a graph at the top, a yellow, it's yellow.
It might be useful to give us the last iteration of the 6-year strategic operating plan. And so is 6 years typical? Do cities, do they project out 10 years?
Most people I talk to, 6 is usually normal. Where we came up with a 7-year capital facilities plan, I don't know, but we do it because that's what's in the ordinance. But it's usually 6 years. When you really there's looking out, and the further out you get, the less reliable that information is, and keeping in mind that councils change and people change and all that type of stuff. So 6 years really works pretty well, as far as it gives us plenty of time to adjust if we know we have problems or we have an issue. I'm pretty comfortable with 6 years personally.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's an important conversation for us to have, because we do have a long-term debt that we need to plan for. And I think when I think of the capital facilities plan being a 7-year plan, what I think you've always told us is, well, if there's not money to do it, to build those projects, we build them when we do get the money. Versus an operating plan where we have commitments that we have to meet every year, every biennium.
What we've really done is in the capital facilities plan, the way we've structured the debt is basically to take the most strict debt or revenues, which is like impact fees, and apply those towards debt for that project.
When you say strict, you mean the most restricted?
Yes.
Okay, so.
And so the more restricted it is, we try to allocate those towards debt, and so that we leave the real estate excise tax wide open. Because it has, even though it's still restricted, it's the least restricted. So it leaves more opportunities. And then one of the things about, and I should back up, but for the citywide graph I was telling you in the budget oversight, the quarterly report, you can see citywide, there was $8 million that came in that was over and above expenditures citywide. That comes from revenues from downtown property sales. Those are being allocated to restricted or designated monies for future payments on this building. That was part of the capital facilities plan before. So we actually anticipate that from here forward, there is, for that debt, there is, I think this year, all that we'll end up paying is about 1.2 million, because the rest of it was paid with capitalized interest, and then there's about, I believe it's $1.5 million of contingency money that wasn't spent, which was part of the 46 million or whatever, 49 million. Anyway, so basically, these monies should pay for the next 6 years, 5 to 6 years of payments on this building, which will allow our downtown to expand and grow and generate revenue. And so the plan is the 1.2 million that we keep trying to set aside in every biennium, that would make the payment on the city hall in future years after the 6 years of using the property monies. And basically it would be half real estate excise tax, 1.5, and then 1.5 of, or 1.2 of the excess revenues that we're talking about. I'm seeing in the last 2 budget cycles, what we have done is we have anticipated that there would be $1.2 million of excess revenues over expenditures that would happen during the biennium, basically $50,000 a month, that would then go towards reinstating reserves and asset replacement. That's been our plan for reinstating those. And so those monies would then be moved once they're reinstated. The way the capital facilities plan reads basically is once our reserves are full, those excesses go over to capital. And so that's right where it'll go, is to capital to make that payment.
I forgot, since you directed us to start asking questions, I did want to say thank you to you and the finance team for putting all of this information out on the web. I mean, people don't know what it was before because they didn't look at it before, but what it was before was a binder in the library or a single document on the web page. And so this is such an improvement that people can go and find these documents. And so I thank you for that.
Well, I wish the rest of my staff was here tonight, but they get paid by the hour. So anyway, the ones that don't are here. They're very proud of it. They worked very hard on it. It's been a long, we've been working on it for about 2 years to get ready for this budget process. And we've been to a couple classes and all that kind of stuff. So the appreciation and the thank you is appreciated on our end.
Okay, thanks. Just one other question. So again, these are really high-level statements, but when you and the directors look at the economic development statement, and it says create and sustain economic development which builds and diversifies the city's revenue streams, where do you gain your guidance from that? I mean, someone says in their budget, yeah, my budget creates and sustains economic development through these line items.
I think that would come out of like the CD department and their efforts towards DSI and that type of thing, working with developers. And it also comes from the planning, making sure that the planning for not just downtown, but when we move on to Canyon Park and start looking at that area, and even in our neighborhoods, we're constantly weighing traffic against development in that. So I think there's a lot of it comes from CD.
And so that's one of our desired budget outcomes. It's number 5, which is continue to improve the development services initiative.
Which
and
they are working on.
And we've had that outcome for years and years and years. So is there ever a time where we say, we got the development services initiative nailed down, and it's so good now that we don't even have to call it out in our desired budget outcomes?
The issue with the development department is that economies expand and contract continuously. So it's very difficult to maintain any stability when your staff is doing this. And you don't, as soon as things start to expand, we don't always know how much expansion is going to happen. And so what we do is we don't hire anybody right away. So it gets, so it's really, they put together a plan for how long should it take for this permit, how long should it take for this. And so because of the staffing changing all the time, it's really hard to stick with it. And I will say that the team over here, between Tom and Peter, they have kind of, for the next budget cycle, some new initiatives that are coming that will deal with that expansion and contraction through outside sources, and will provide a quicker turnaround on some things. So I think we continue to try to improve it, and I think it's an area where Bothell, like so many areas, gets a lot of bad press over their development departments. People get frustrated with them, that type of thing. And so I think it's something we need to keep front and center and always be thinking about and talking about, and make sure that we are enhancing where we can, changing when we can, what we can, and keeping up with whatever the economic situation is at that time. But I'm not voting tonight.
Neither are we. Is that all your questions? Do you have comments on the focus areas, or?
Well, those are kind of my focus, my questions. I mean, the language is really high level. It's really broad. It comes down to how it's interpreted. And so I don't know, I don't necessarily think that it's important to change the focus areas. But I did have that question about the Development Services Initiative. That continues to be one of our desired budget outcomes. At what point do we get to check that off the list?
Good. Does anybody else want to change the focus areas? You have comments on the focus areas, Deputy Mayor?
So first of all, I want to thank you. I'm so impressed.
Oh, thank you.
Really, really impressed. As a new member and a complete neophyte to the budget process, I feel like maybe I can get a handle on it.
Oh, you will.
And I can you send us the link? I've tried to write it down, but I don't know if I got it all, for that one page with all the hyperlinks.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I think I'll be spending some time there. The other thing that I wanted to say is the budget focus areas, when I thought about the things that matter to me, they all kind of fit in these categories, but I think the disconnect for me is looking at them, it feels like maybe there's weight to certain ones over others, and yet they're not numbered. And so I guess I'm just wondering how staff is able to look at that and make that determination, because I would say, economic development to me seems to be pretty well focused on, but then with the concerns about fire and roads and sidewalks, maybe that's not really been a priority. And so I guess I'm trying to understand, what do you need from us? Because this is just a list of really vague areas.
A lot of the focus areas, they pertain mostly to fostering the city's vision and mission statements. And, but different departments actually are impacted by these differently. So like the fire department and the police department are going to go, okay, we're one of the focus areas. And then CD is going to say, we're one of the focus areas based on those. So they were purposely years ago not prioritized, because this is the overall view of what we want for the community. That was how it was envisioned. And so it would be like the combination of these items. So I'm not, as far as being weighted for the different departments, most of us actually fit into different categories.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I guess that's my comments for now.
All right, we can move on to budget initiatives or outcomes, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Councilmember Spivey?
Great, thank you. We have the focus areas and the desired outcomes. On the desired outcomes, the next to last bullet, continue to create an active and vibrant downtown by implementing the actions established within the city's downtown revitalization plan. I'd like to add something in there along the lines of, while continuing to plan for the economic redevelopment of the Snohomish County portion of the city.
Could you say that one more time?
It's
My
not,
staff is writing this
yeah,
down.
it doesn't have to be exact, but basically to include language that would support continued planning of the economic redevelopment of that Snohomish County Economic Center in the
Okay.
city. I'll let
Thank
you
you.
guys figure out the best language, but we've
It'll
been
come
talking about the
back.
Canyon Park, the Thrasher's Corner region, the 527.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to make sure that we're memorializing that. That's the next step in our economic redevelopment.
We'll add everybody's input, and then you guys can, amongst yourself, determine what, how you want it actually to read. So we'll just put in there 5 different or 7 different versions if we need to, and then you guys can weigh them and think about them.
And then also on budget outcomes, it kind of goes with the public safety and security. I just want to make sure that we have something in there about our properly funding our fire department to provide the highest level of training as well.
What was added last year was this second bullet basically was, while in addition establishing strategies for reinstatement of reinstating pre-recession operating funding levels. Now, do you want to, are you asking to enhance those or just to reinstate or fully fund?
Yes.
You want the fully fund?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
And I'm calling out the fire department specifically.
Okay. That's totally what this is about, is being very, very specific. What do you want? So that when we go back and put these budgets together, we, as staff, we're really clear. That's what they're looking for. And so we can focus whatever resources we have towards that.
Yeah, I want a fully funded fire department.
Okay.
And that's it for now.
Councilmember Freed?
Great. Great job. Last year, you told us great things were coming with transparency and this openness regarding the budget, and you and your staff did a great job putting that forward. We considered a few different resources that we could, like you mentioned, New York, because they have this wonderful program that citizens can jump online and look at, but I think this is extremely helpful.
I will say that their infrastructure is not as good as ours, though. I went into the subway.
Subway is an interesting experience. Even Hillary had an issue with trying to get
Yeah.
her car to work through the subway, but it is fun. Anyway, great job. That's what I want to say from the get-go. In regards to the first point on budget focus areas and financial stability, I agree that should be the top bullet point. I like seeing that move forward. There were a couple comments tonight that we're, as a city, in a destitute situation on the edge of bankruptcy. Is that an accurate statement?
Actually, our credit rating was just reaffirmed, and I believe I forwarded that to the council. I think that the understanding of the debt, or if we, I will say, if we have another major recession like we had before, we wouldn't be able to weather it the way we did the last one. There would be layoffs, that type of thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna-
because we don't have the reserves that I would really like to see us have.
Great, I'm going to get to that on the second page for sure. But our credit rating has continued to increase over the last 10 to 12 years.
And it increased, yeah, to a AA2, which is, at the time, I think it was like the 8th highest in the state or something for cities, but, which we were pretty proud of. But most of it has to do with the managing of what we're doing. It's not always that you're in the best position of everybody. It's that you're managing it. They want to see that you're managing it, that when something happens, you recognize it, you deliberate on it, and you take immediate action. And that's what they really want to see, because those are the people who survive. The people who went with the recession and just kind of hid and hoped for the best, those are the ones who had the hardest time pulling out of it. We took action, we invested, we did some things, we kept our people working, which, kept providing the service level that we wanted to. So we did some good things.
Well, I appreciate that, and I thank you for your leadership in that regard. When folks come in and say some statements that sound very concerning, I think it's right to make sure that the citizens know the city's in good shape and we are continuing to move forward. In regards to economic development, I support that. Obviously, I'm excited with what's been happening with $300 million of private investment in downtown. When it comes to public safety and security, I do think that we should add in a specific sentence for absolute clarity that we need an adequate level of operating funds for the fire department. Last week, I think the request went from 600,000 down to 160,000 or somewhere in that area.
The direction that I heard was that the 170 or 180 was minimal, but that we wanted something between there and the 600, and that's what I'm currently looking for.
That's excellent.
Is that correct?
So as long as you have in there, I was going to throw it under quality of life, but I think a more important place to put a sentence to follow would be an adequate operating level for the fire department with the goals that ultimately we'll set. Quality of life, I think we're all seeing that continue to improve. Recent ratings show that 95% of the citizens think that their situation is good and strong in the city, and 83% like the direction that the city's been going. So overall, I think quality of life has certainly improved over the last 10 to 12 years, and I want to see that continue to improve. Community connections and involvement. To the end of this, I would like to add understanding of engagement in city issues and build strong partnerships. I'd like to add some comments regarding building some relationships, obviously, with the school district, with community transit, and I don't want to say just community transit because there's actually just community transit, but there's also Metro and Sound Transit, so maybe transportation organizations or something to that extent. And also, I think on the heart of probably everyone of us on this council is affordable housing. We heard tonight from Imagine Housing, and I know there's other affordable housing entities out there, and I think as a city, we have a lot of work to do in that area. So I would love to see that we set that as a priority as a council to discuss. Flipping the page to the desired outcomes, I go to the second bullet on there, and it says continue to reestablish the city's minimum level to 15%. It's a bit vague in its goal seeking continue to reestablish. I would like to actually clearly state, establish the city's minimum reserve level to 10% this budget season. Is that possible?
Well, actually, our credit rating, I need to explain one thing. Our credit rating that we just received actually said that our reserve was, close to 15%. But
It is currently at 15%?
yes, but the reason why is because the asset replacement fund, which basically we fund everything that one thing the city does that's very different than others is anything that is cyclical, it has to be purchased. We know it's coming. We put into the asset replacement fund. If it's vests for police officers, if it's the
Well, how best to
masks.
say it, Tammy, rather than continue, just say maintain the city's minimum 15% reserve? I mean, if we're already there.
Well, because we look at them separately. But I know you just read this, so people are going to go, why is she saying a different number than what it said? So I want to just be very clear. We don't see the general fund and the asset replacement fund as one fund because what they support is separate. It's not in the general fund. We've moved the need for that vest over to this other fund. And so I don't like to couple the two of them. I like to be very clear about what these monies are for and what these monies are for. And because when the fire chief needs the masks, and it costs $100,000, and we have to have certified mask and all of that, he doesn't need to think about that.
Yeah.
Well, he does, but it's in another fund. It's planned for. We're aware and setting the money aside. So.
Okay. Well, I'll leave you in charge of that, but I would like, if the whole thing we shall versus will, I would like we will maintain the 15% rather than a goal to hopefully attain over time. That's how I was reading it. Maybe you don't want me to. And then in the last bullet, continue to create an active and vibrant downtown by implementing the actions established within the city's downtown revitalization plan. I would like to support Councilmember Spivey's statement regarding the Snohomish County portion of the city, and more specifically the Canyon Park sub-area. we're going to revisit that next year. And so making sure that we have adequate funds for the consultants that we need. I hope for outreach this year, that got voted down, but I won't rest on that. Hopefully next year we can hit this full bore in January. So making sure that we have adequate funds to do so. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Councilmember Agnew, so we've moved off of just focus areas and and I need a motion to extend as well. Are you willing to?
I'd like to make a motion to extend to 10 o'clock.
Motion made by Councilmember Agnew and seconded by Councilmember McNeil to extend to 10 o'clock. Place your vote. All right, let's just raise your hand. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passed unanimous. Councilmember Agnew, you have the floor.
Nice presentation. It was
Thank you.
very concise. It was very good. And I agree with 99% of it. There's 1% that I really don't, and that's, and Councilmember Spivey brought it up, and that's the fire department. We've talked about the fire department, the streets and the sidewalks as being our main concerns. We're going to go to the vote of the people and try to fix the streets and the sidewalks, but we probably aren't going to go to a vote of the people to fix the fire department. I'd like to see us, and I'm going to be very specific here, take $500,000 out of our reserve fund and give it to the fire department this year. For 2 years, they've been coming and asking for funding, and for 2 years, we've been telling them we'll give it to them, and we haven't. And I'd also like to see their budget increase 10%. So I think we need to do that. These people need the equipment to do the job. They need the training to do the job. And in the recession, we cut all that. And we need to bring that back again. Not just to what it was in the past, but we need to bring it up. I mean, the one thing the RFA showed us is that our firefighters, our men and women that are out there, they do twice as much work as Woodinville with the same staffing. You know, 50% of the time, they're not available for a call because they're on a call. So we need to address some of these issues, and we need to address them now. So with that being said, I'll let the other people speak.
Anybody else on budget outcomes? Councilmember McNeil?
Thank you. Fabulous presentation.
Thank you.
And I am thoroughly excited about the new look of the budget and the process and going through it, actually. I think everybody's kind of spoken to a few things that were on my list as well, the fire department front and center. But I also want to make sure that we're taking a look at some of the other things that we've talked about as a council, and that is the public safety, that is the crosswalks, the sidewalks, you know, making sure that we have safe routes to schools for our kids. Public safety, we shouldn't leave just the fire department. We should also be looking at the police to make sure that we have ample programs in place to make sure that we're engaging with our community. That includes kids in schools. I don't know how that works, but you know, I remember growing up as a child and getting a card from a police officer, and that made all the difference in the world. So we want to make sure that we're including not only fire, but police as well. And then open spaces and parks. And I think we all know that we're working really hard to make that happen. When we talk about Bothell, I look at Bothell as a whole. And I think that most of us appreciate all parts of Bothell. So when we make statements in here, I guess from my perspective, I don't look at downtown as the only part of Bothell. I look at Canyon Park. I look at north, south, east, west, everything as a whole. And I think if we work together as a whole on all of these things for all parts of our community, we'll be far better off. So I want to make sure that we're not just isolating certain parts of our city, but looking at the whole city. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much for your hard work on this and your staff as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of people behind me.
Councilmember Sandberg?
I guess technically you have to ask the whole body if they want to open up to a round. I have a question. not a
Well,
comment.
we were just doing focus areas first, and now a
Okay,
couple council members didn't exactly follow that, so we're doing outcomes as well.
okay.
So you haven't had a chance, I mean, you followed the rules, and so if you have things you'd like to talk about the budget outcomes, there's opportunity.
Well, in developing the budget, how are you factoring in this Snohomish County measure, which is the criminal justice and fire protection measure, that if passed, will bring revenue to the city? And if not passed, it won't. How will you be constructing the budget process to account for whether, if we decide to put a street operation and pavement condition levy out there, are you budgeting based on what do we do if it passes, what do we do if that fails?
We actually, as a group, we have discussed that, and basically, the Snohomish County, we won't include any of that unless it happens. So we will go at this budget looking to provide for the fire department through other means. I will come back. I already have a couple of ideas. They probably won't be totally popular, but I'll put the options out there, and you guys can weigh them, how to do it. So we'll prepare in-house. If those monies come, then we'll look at the other departments that need help too, and we'll prioritize those. Actually, we'll bring it to you, and you will, but otherwise they'll go back into the reserve.
And
You asked about one other thing, didn't you? Some other funding source. Oh, the bond going out for a levy. We will not include any of that, although we will assume, based on our last week discussion, that at least there's funding for a TIB, so there'll be a partial street department. We will bring that.
so, okay, so what you're saying is that, just so people who are listening understand and make sure I understand, you're not going to budget for the passing of the bond.
Correct. It'll be a budget
however-
amendment that will happen at the end of once we know, then we'll add it in. We'll have it ready to go, but we won't actually add it in when we bring it to you.
But we might have a strategy that says, if we receive, if the voters approve this bond, then instead of, we can use that money in the street operations fund, and instead we can put that money either to the reserves or asset replacement or some other budget priority.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. As a matter of fact, like with the street department, Public Works actually will have two budgets pretty much ready to go. The first one will come in, they'll put in enough revenue for something like a TIB or that type of thing in order to keep partial funding for the street fund or partial staffing.
What do you mean when you say TIB? I'm thinking transportation
TIB,
benefit.
I'm sorry.
A TBD?
Yeah, TBD.
Okay,
I'm
so,
sorry.
and so what that means is that if, for example, the voters do not pass a bond that we may or may not put on the ballot, we haven't made that decision yet, then an option that the city has, I'm not going to say the likelihood of passing that, would be to implement a $20 car tab fee, which would fund a transportation benefit district that could be used to fund our street operation. Or
Yeah.
it would not fund, funding a TBD isn't the exact wording,
The
but
budget that will come to you, the recommended budget, there's a city manager that's not here right now, who will weigh in obviously too. But my recommendation is it doesn't actually say that it's a transportation benefit district. It will say there were funding from an unidentified source at this time, that type of thing. And then we'll talk about it as a group and determine how to move forward
okay.
to try to assure that there is a street department.
And so I'm hearing from all of us that we would like a lot of things. And so at this stage of the process, are you feeling as though, based on our revenue projections, based on our past performance from the 4 quarters of 2015, are we going to be able to achieve all these things with expansion, or would these have to be achieved with cuts to the existing budget?
I don't think it'll come with cuts to the existing budget. Basically, what we've talked about in our budget group so far is that we're looking at CPI, which is 2.4 to 2.5% increase year over year for both 17 and 18, and that's a Puget Sound number. That's not a Bothell number. I think Bothell might actually be higher because of all the things we have going on. It's very popular, so we're getting more attention than a lot of people. They're wanting to come here to make minimums. They're wanting to do things. So I think we'll see some additional sales tax over what maybe some of our neighboring cities. We'll see. One of the concerns is basically that construction employment has pretty much stabilized, and so probably this construction boom is, it could be done, it could be, I know in Bellevue, their lease space is increased by 50% in the last quarter. Okay, so we seem to be, I'm watching here, and we seem to kind of be skirting by and not seeing that happen. So I think because of some of the popularity that we have right now, because of the McMinimans thing and people just wanting to come see it, and I think we're going to come out ahead of where other people are. I don't see construction just falling off, but I just see, you see a boom and it stabilizes, and so it's something to watch. So when we talk about a biennial budget, we're talking about 24 months plus 9 months to prepare it, or 12 months to prepare it. So we need to be aware. We need to watch. We go with the best numbers that we can get from the local economists, that type of thing, national economists as well. And then we watch and we contract or we expand. And we just have to be prepared to do both of those things in order to maintain our fiscal position. That's what will always keep us out of trouble. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Sort of, yeah. I didn't, I didn't want to add specific asks in the desired budget outcomes, but we have talked about specific asks here, and so one of the things I would like to see is more funding for community events. We dropped off things like Riverfest, and I think that those community events create a sense of civic pride and draw people to our city. And I don't know if I want to have that as a statement in the budget outcomes, because it kind of goes against my intent to put specific things in there, but I'm putting that out there.
I think you're probably, if we're doing our job the way we're hoping to, you'll probably get some more input from citizens too over the next 9 months. So you guys create this, you can change it, that type of thing. You can update it based on information that you're getting. And even during a budget, the 2 years, 15, 16, when Councilmember Agnew mentioned something about fire and making those changes through the 17, 18 development, those are things that you can do is through the budget amendment in 16, 15, 16. You can ask us to go back and do those things, to look for money for those things. We're hearing you. You don't always see what we're doing, but we do hear, and we are back there working on it. We have already been working on that. Okay.
Great. Oh, Deputy Mayor, you got more?
Well, I thought we were only asking questions. So I had some specific things that I wanted, since other people got into it. I wasn't sure that the first time I spoke that was the appropriate time. So I have concerns about the Lot D cleanup. I haven't heard anything in terms of MOCTA funds that we received and where we stand, but that's a huge concern to me, and I want to make sure that we get that done to move that development forward.
Aaron, did you want to speak, or do you want to provide a memo? You want to do the memo? Because then you can have other staff weigh in too that have been at yeah. Okay, so we'll prepare a memo if that's okay.
That'd be
so
great.
we can get everybody to weigh in on the areas that they're aware of. So I was just asking the same question 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So we all want to know.
Right. I think if that development doesn't happen, we're going to hear about it.
Yeah. We do have options, and hopefully we will receive some of the money. We may have to come up with part of it, but we do have reserves within the capital facilities plan. One of the fiscal policies is that we have to keep $1 million in cash in real estate excise tax and that type of thing. So we do have we do have things we can do. We can also do, I talked to the mayor a little bit about internal, we can actually do an internal loan between funds. And so that we don't have to go out and bond for, a couple of years, but we just need to find a funding source that's going to pay that debt off. Or when you go out and bond, you have to wait 10 years. In order to get a decent interest rate, you have to wait 10 years before you can pay it off, because the people who buy the bonds want to make sure they're going to make some money off of it. And so, and then there's administrative fees and there's legal fees and all this. So if we can do it internally where we borrow from another fund at the state pool's interest rate, which is about nil, we have options.
Okay.
Okay.
The other thing along those lines is the Main Street infrastructure. I understand we have a grant application in that we'll hear about at the end of June, but if we don't get it, do we have a plan B? And even if we do get it, I imagine that there's some portion that we need to pay, and I'm assuming that we've already planned for that, but.
Are you in the Capital Facilities Committee? Okay. You'll get lots of time to make those decisions, because we will come to you and we will, we're close. And basically we'll lay out, this is the plan that's in place. These are the places that you can't change because we have fiscal obligations, whatever, contractual obligations. These are the things you can change. These are we got a lot of citizen input this time, the most we've ever gotten. And so there's a lot of new projects in there, that type of thing. So you're going to have a lot of things to weigh and consider. We're never going to get everything that we
Right.
want, but as long as we know what we want, we can keep pushing towards it, right?
Right. So the other things I had on my list real quickly was, I also had affordable housing, although I'm hoping that doesn't need to be a budget item, but more an ordinance, passing a citywide ordinance. But since it was brought up before, I thought I'd bring it up again. And then I also agree on, I'd like to see community events, and I think those are great opportunities for the engagement, community connections and involvement.
I think we need to be where people are.
Right. Yeah. So,
So we're going to go to them.
right. And I also think that, we've got a lot of people coming into council meetings. Maybe we could have displays or something out there so people on breaks or whatever
I
can look.
made 50 copies. They're sitting out
Awesome.
there now. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you
we're
so
trying
much.
everything, and then we do recycle, but we'll take them to other events too and hand them out. We really want to be there when we're handing them out, so we can kind of get people a little bit excited about it. So
Great. Okay. I've taken up enough time. Thank you so much.
I had some things to add, but I'll just do them real quick. So, I wanted to know about the reserve levels, and I just remember a couple of years ago you said like we're there on the reserve level, so if we add more, it doesn't really help our rating. So, if there is any surplus reserve, I agree with Councilmember Agnew to, in a lack of a better term, throw the fire department a bone for remaining part of the city of Bothell. Also looking at, I'd like to see the funding for the roads crew and road preservation, fire and police all looked at seriously to look at like what have they lost over the recession, and what can we do to actually get them back up to a service level that they feel comfortable at.
the roads has come before you. Police actually does have a plan, because all of the departments put a plan together during the last budget cycle. So I'll ask them to update that.
Okay, that'd be good. One of the things that I've seen, and I would like to have, because I think you and I talked about this, or maybe it was Mr. Trotzen, but what I would like to see, because it's hard when we get the budget, what usually happens is somebody says, well, I'd like to see more money go to this, and then you're asked from the dais, well, where do you want to get that money from? And I mean, I could blindly guess and pick and choose, but what I would really like to see is a scalability up and down by fund at 2%, 3%, and 5%. And then with each one of those, if you scale up the level of service indication about like what will that do for your level of service for whatever it is you're asking for or reducing. You know, obviously the level of service would go down if you're reducing. But just so we have some intel when we're looking at the budget, if we're looking at changing things as a council, that at least we have some information from staff that gives us the tools necessary to make good decisions from up here.
I think when we get to that point too, you probably are going to want to look at what functions are people providing, because sometimes when you do just percentages across the board, you may, if you look at the same time, if you're looking at what services are being provided, you may decide that you'd rather see 10% go here and no increase here. You know what I mean? So probably we should do that hand in hand.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just said 10% cut would be
Yeah.
pretty draconian, I would imagine, in any fund.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why I said 5.
Yeah.
I'd like to see us focus in on restoring our sidewalk program and our traffic safety program. I know those have been pretty cut down pretty far on top of the road preservation stuff. And that's all part of the levy, but I think it needs to be in our budget outcomes. Traffic calming program or a traffic improvement program, you know, like getting smart signals, that type of thing. And then actually the neighborhoods and places where you want people to slow down, looking at speed humps. That's one of the things, I don't know, I can't tell you how many times people have asked me to get a speed hump in front of their house, which is like the worst thing possible for drainage. But the other thing too I'd like to throw out there, and we talked about the North Shore School District about this, and I did look at the ProSAP in preparation for this meeting, and we have these holes in our park service areas that there's, I think it's community parks is the category, and there's a couple schools in the Snohomish County part of the city specifically that if we could partner with the school district, I think it would be a low capital investment to actually improve those horrible dirt fields that the kids are playing on now, to make them into actual community park outside of school hours, and then we could partner with them to maintain them and have a higher level of service at those schools. And I think it'd just be a win-win for everybody involved.
Okay, I'm pretty sure the director's already has looked into that, so I'll let him just speak to that one in next time we meet. Is that okay?
Yep.
Oh, I know it's getting late.
And then the last one is to acquire parks land, not to develop them. We've heard a lot from the public that they want to have some preservation of public lands before it's all built out, because then once it's built, you know, you can't really go back. And just to have an idea, I mean, in Snohomish County specifically, we obviously have something targeted with the Wayne Golf Course in the Snohomish County portion of the city, or King County portion of the city, but we really need to look at the Snohomish County portion of the city for acquiring some land for future park development.
I think the fact that we have, during the last budget cycle, that we brought in the parks director, he's doing a lot of things. He's really looking out for us. There's an advocate in those areas now that is such an improvement. Honestly, I didn't understand how much difference that would make. But it really has. I see it. He's bringing in grant application after grant application, you know. So things are happening. I think he's staying in touch with all of that. But I'll have him respond next time.
Okay. And then 2 more things. So the regional partnering, that was brought up with transit, but I think Puget Sound Regional Council as well. A lot of you know, council members go to those and they have staff support, and they're more strategic, I would say, than we are as a city, of getting, you know, the big dollar amounts of money allocated to the city of Bothell through the Puget Sound Regional Council, as well as the transit authorities. It'd be great to have some more scheduled staff support to try to really leverage our ability to get money and regional money, our tax dollars, back into the city.
Can I ask a clarifying question? And that is for community connections and involvement. Do you want me just to narrow it down on a desired budget outcome for this 2 years, or are you guys talking about actually changing the focus area?
I was thinking of a budget outcome, but
the budget outcome?
yeah, I was
think the last
leaning that
one
way.
was I'll put it both ways, and you guys can decide next time.
And the last thing, I don't know if I would think it would be a budget reduction or improvement, but the way we handle, you know, public comment and us individually trying to get answers for the public and that type of thing. I know there's a ombudsman kind of system that we could look at, and it'd probably be more efficient in the long run, but we'd have to actually staff it to try to get it up off the ground and get it set up so that, each individual council member isn't trying to run traffic for citizens to the city manager, to directors and that type of thing.
I think that is kind of an organizational thing that can be looked at within the staffing. You look at different positions that you have when they become open, it kind of gives you an opportunity to look at different ways of doing things. So that could, we could look at that as things open up. Otherwise, we could look at it as an actual staffing ad. So we can do either one.
Okay.
Does that make?
I don't know if I got that one, but
Basically, what I'm saying is that if there's not funding for staffing ads, it doesn't mean it can't happen. It just might take a little bit more time because we'll wait for a couple other positions where we go, you know what, we need this more than we need this. So maybe we won't fill this one, or maybe we need to have during certain times an interim or a limited term ombudsman to see how it works. So let's just hire somebody for one budget cycle, and we're going to spend this much money. And then if it's really, really beneficial, we'll keep it going. But the person knows when they get hired that it's short term. So there's different options that are available to you.
I don't need to pick one now, right?
No.
Okay, good.
No. I'll just put in there that you're interested in adding that type of capacity.
And if we come up with other things, can we just send them to you, or do you want that to be communicated in open session?
I don't think it's a problem. Do you have a problem with that? I think it's totally okay that you send me stuff through email and we can add them.
Okay.
Sometimes, get the idea out so we don't forget.
Yeah, it's getting late, so I don't know how excited we are at this point. Okay, I think that wraps it up. We're good?
Yeah, you said if we
Councilmember
have
Freed?
other further comments to be able to email them, is that correct?
I just asked if we could, yeah.
Okay.
And she said, yeah.
Protocol manual, typically we go through the city manager. So we should probably keep that.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, just-
so that's the end of that. Thank you very much for your presentation. Also, thank your staff for us.
I will
was
tomorrow. You know what?
great improvement.
I'll actually ask them all to watch the council meeting, at least this section of it, at their desk and have a donut or something. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so we had one agenda item added by Councilmember Spivey. All I wrote is to open, so I'll just hand it over to you.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I just wanting for clarity and transparency, and to just allow us the ability to talk and be transparent. So I will make the motion to open up our executive, what's the word? How am I want to put it? Our exec session regarding Mr. Stowe and his performance evaluations. Open that up to, public discussion.
Our motion is made by Councilmember Spivey, seconded by Councilmember Freed, to open the executive, do you mean just one executive session?
No, all of them
All?
relating to Mr. Stowe and his performance evaluations.
All executive sessions relating to Mr. Stowe's performance evaluations.
No, it was anything related to Mr. Stowe and including his performance evaluations.
Relating to Mr. Stowe and his performance evaluations, and do you mean in this, do you have a time frame, just real quick?
I would say for the time period that anybody that's sitting at the council.
So I could
So-
go back 12, who's been here the longest?
Councilmember
10
Freed and I
years.
are in our 11th year.
For 11 years, okay. Do you want to speak to your motion?
I just think that in the interest of transparency and the public wants to know what's going on, and personal evaluations aren't necessarily, or his personal evaluations weren't necessarily open to the public, so I think that those evaluations should be part of this so that there's transparency and people know what was discussed during executive session and how we got to where we are today.
Oh, there he is. City Attorney, can you speak to this motion and give us some advice?
Yes, I can. Thank you. In the first instance, I'm not actually sure what the motion is intended to accomplish. On the one hand, I thought it was to open tonight's discussion and hold that discussion in public session as compared to executive session. And then I thought I heard something about waiving the executive privilege as to past meetings of the council with regard to Mr. Stowe's performance evaluations. So I don't want to interfere with your meeting, but can I inquire as to which of those is on the table right now?
It wasn't about tonight's executive session, making tonight's executive session public. It was about opening up the ability to talk about the past executive sessions on dealing with the termination of Mr. Stowe, his past performance evaluations, how we got to where we are today.
Okay. So essentially, from tonight back to his hire date, to a year?
I would say we couldn't go any further back than when Councilmember Freed and I started.
He said 11 years earlier.
And you said that because,
Performance evaluations.
right, I'm sorry, but you said that because you wouldn't only have personal knowledge of what.
Correct.
Of those, okay. Okay, well, so, okay. I'm glad that you are not wanting to waive the privilege to go into executive session this evening and discuss issues with your outside counsel who's here tonight to discuss that with you. With regard to waiving past executive session privilege, it is certainly the council's prerogative to do so. It can be problematic and can create problems, and in this instance, I'm feeling it's unbounded, but of course, I'm just your interim city attorney, and I don't have the background going back several years on this issue. I don't know if the assistant city manager wants to chime in or not, and I would be happy to discuss this further with you. I mean, it has advantages and disadvantages, and from a legal perspective, it just can be problematic to open up something without knowing the scope of what it is that you're actually opening and what the parameters of the discussions might be that you are then going to report on either here or out in the community in some other form. I'm not trying to stymie this, I'm just
Right.
trying to
Yeah,
allude to the issues and.
My intent is to be able to talk about his past performance evaluations, and then also essentially from, I guess I could narrow the scope to his past performance evaluations, and then anything dealing with the city managers maintaining employment or possible termination in the lot. So that would be the narrowed scope.
Councilmember Agnew?
I'd be I'd be uncomfortable doing this without Mr. Stowe's approval. Those are his performance evaluations. I think we should ask him if he'd like us to get into those. That's how I feel.
Did you want to?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
thought Councilmember Sandberg as well, but
Go ahead.
I'll go first. Yeah, I think it's important. The public's been asking for what happened behind closed doors, and as I stated earlier, I think it's freeing to let people understand what happens back there. I just received an email, as did all of us on the dais tonight, regarding communication between the mayor and former city manager that I think it would be important for us to be able to release executive session material based upon things that were stated. So I think this email brings some clarity that I would like to have some better understanding on. I think putting light on things is beneficial for the city as a whole. So that's why I speak to it. I would ask the city attorney, is this motion out of order, or is it in regards appropriate with the protocol manual or state law?
I don't think that it is out of order
Okay,
in a Robert's Rules sense. I don't think that I don't know your protocol manual sufficiently, I'm afraid to say. It's 120 or 30 pages long, and I haven't read all of it. So I don't know whether what you're proposing is consistent or inconsistent in that respect.
okay. Yeah, well, my full intention, of course, is to do what would be appropriate, and I think the comment that was made that we should ask Bob first if we should release that, I think we should have actually included Bob in this entire process, which is why we're where we are today. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to speak about this in executive session if this vote fails tonight.
Councilmember Spivey. I'm sorry, Councilmember Sandberg.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you want to yield the floor? Go ahead.
I was just willing to narrow, to even narrow the scope down just to the, not, just to the, as far as personal evaluations, just to what the overall statement was. His evaluations were done in a 360, including employees, staff, the general public, council. So it just, I guess the final, was it a good eval or a bad eval? I would narrow the scope down to that, to no more than that. But just so that people understood, the type of evaluations that he got, just from a standpoint of good, bad, or neutral. And then again, mostly probably the last year or two in regards to discussions related to whether he should be terminated or not.
Councilmember Sandberg.
I share Councilmember Agnew's concern. I remember that there was a public records request specifically requesting the former city manager's performance reviews and personnel information while he was a city manager. And I would imagine that he was part of the decision, along with the city attorney, deciding not to release that information. So that information was requested previously. It was requested last year. And at the time, the decision was made to not release it because it's protected personnel information. So, so I share Councilmember Agnew's concerns about, we don't know if Mr. Stowe would like that released. He has copies. I would imagine that if he wants them released, he can. But since we've already been through that exercise and that public records request was denied, I'm not seeing the value of going through that. Now, I'm concerned about the openness and the extent of this motion, because we don't keep minutes of our executive sessions. So when we say we're going to waive executive privilege, do we know which executive sessions we're talking about? Are there meetings that we can release? Or is this going to be people's interpretation of what was said? So I think it's far too open. And I'm going to be voting against the motion, and I trust that we will get more advice in our executive session tonight.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Mayor, I'm willing to withdraw my motion and make a different motion, if I have the consent of the seconder.
Okay,
All right.
withdrawn.
Then I would like to make the motion that we waive executive privilege in regarding discussions on the termination of former city manager Stowe.
So we have a motion and a second to waive executive privilege on discussions of terminating the city manager. Is that accurate?
In a nutshell, yes.
And is that one executive session? Is that two? Which ones are you referring to?
There's two.
I could actually
There's-
probably say there's 3, but
And what are the dates of those?
I don't have the dates off the top of my head. But I think it's pretty clear that it's the ones that occurred this year, and I believe there was one at one instance during the city manager's last evaluation.
He didn't have an evaluation. in
So we don't do
2016.
we don't talk across the dice.
I'm just saying his last evaluation.
Okay. Is there any more further discussion on the motion? Let's vote. Affirmative would be to release the executive session information related to Mr. Stowe's termination. Oh, wait. So I messed up on my button. What do I do about that? Okay. Motion fails 4-3. Do you wish to make another motion? Are you ready to go to executive
I
session?
would just like to make a comment on this outcome.
Go ahead.
I was just waiting for your go ahead. I find it disappointing that the council has chosen not to open executive privilege regarding this matter. We've, last year, on very issue of transparency, waived executive privilege, and even when one of the council members was involved, he actually welcomed the waiving of the executive privilege as well as a third-party investigation, and I find it disappointing that council refuses to be transparent and not waive executive privilege here. So I'm disappointed in council.
So I'd like to just add to that real quick before we go to executive session that we were directed by legal advice last time that we could release executive privilege for certain council meetings. We have not had that discussion with our attorneys at this point, which way it sounds like we're just about to have those. And after that, if they give us the direction to do so, I'd be willing to do it. So with that, we're at 9:30.
Mayor, I'd like to say the same. I would like to
Oh, Councilmember McNeil.
second that if we are given permission by our attorneys to release information that has been discussed in executive session, that I also am willing to discuss that.
I'm not going to comment. I just want to make sure that if we need to do a motion to extend before we go into executive session, that we do that.
Let's do it now. I'd entertain a motion to extend.
Move to extend to 11 o'clock.
We have a motion to extend to 11 o'clock, seconded by the deputy mayor. Can we vote on that? Okay. Motion passes. So we will go into executive session until 11 p.m., and I don't believe we have any reason to come back out to the dais. Oh, city attorney? Oh, thank you very much. I think all of the above. Litigation matters, personnel matters, and property matters. And litigation. I think I said litigation already. Okay. We'll be in executive session.